Tonight, I'm joined by the brilliant author and broadcaster Emma Woolf, and back as left in the corner, we've got Mr. Simon Danczuk, former Labour MP and a bit of a secret Tory, I think. But listen, guys, we're going to get... He's shaking his head. We're going to get straight to it. A former Prime Minister this week said that the Conservatives are drifting towards defeat. Emma, I don't believe that. I think we're going to win the next general election. I think we'll get a majority. But do you agree or disagree?
No, I agree with Boris Johnson completely. Obviously, it's unhelpful when former Prime Ministers weigh in. That's not what Sunak wants at all. Yeah. But I think he's absolutely spot on here. Rishi Sunak has failed to stamp his authority on the Conservative Party. We've seen that more than ever over the past few weeks. We had suspended MPs out campaigning. We now have had drift from Sunak on this issue of the marches this weekend. Yeah. He should have made a decision 3 weeks ago. It's no surprise that Remembrance Day weekend is coming up. The Armistice weekend is coming up. He's let it drift. He's got his Home Secretary going rogue. Yeah. I think that Sunak has lost control of his party. He's drifting, and a lot will depend, obviously, on what happens to Labour over the next 12 months, if it's about 12 months. Simon,
strong words from Emma. I disagree wholeheartedly with what Emma has to say.
I don't agree with Emma. I think there's all to play for on both sides. I think Sunak has steadied the ship, in terms of the economy. I think Starmer is getting his act together. But he's got problems around the Middle East and all that issue. His party's coming apart there. That might help Sunak. So I think there's all to play for on both sides.
That's interesting, Emma, because it talks about... I mean, let's have a chat about Starmer, because when I'm out on the doorstep, yes, people may be a little bit grumpy with the Conservative Party at the moment. You know, we've been through COVID, we've got the war in Ukraine, things, people feel like they might have less money in their pocket. But they're saying to me, we're not voting Labour.
Exactly. I think that Starmer has failed to make an impact. Absolutely, I would agree with you. Simon says that Rishi Sunak has steadied the ship. Well, I mean, pretty much had to steady the ship after Liz Truss sank it, capsized it, in last October. People are not feeling it in their pockets. That's the thing. Yes, the economy, yes, inflation is finally starting to sort of level off. Yes, the economy is starting to pick up. House prices are starting to pick up a little bit. But A, for how long? And B, people are not feeling richer. That's what's going to do it. It's the economy, stupid. We always say that. But I think over the next 12 months, we're heading into winter. Yeah. People are desperately worried still.
So Simon, Emma's pushing the poverty button here. And I'm a big believer that in this country, nobody's in real poverty like we see in some of the countries that you've visited. Definitely in Africa. I know you go to Rwanda on a regular basis. Yes, people are feeling the pinch. I know they have fuel prices, petrol prices, whatever, but it's not the poverty we see in other countries.
No, absolutely correct. I mean, things have been tough for people, though. There's no doubt about that. But I think there's an acceptance that it's been tough. We've got through the pandemic. There's the war in Ukraine affecting energy prices. It's been a really, really tough couple of years. And in terms of Starmer and Sunak, the public don't love either of them. There's no love for Starmer, there's no love for Sunak. But it could be a 1992 situation where the Conservatives, if Starmer's not careful, just come through it and just about pip him at the post and win it.
And I think it'll come down to turnout, really. I think a lot of people, like myself, feel like homeless Conservatives. They don't know where to take that vote. That's what I'm hearing from so many people. Centre-right, rational people don't know where to go right now with their vote. Yeah, and so it'll come down to, can Labour get the vote out?
Yeah, when it comes to election day, though, we all get pretty grumpy with our parties. Nothing's ever perfect. But when it comes to that day, and, it's 7 o'clock and the polling station's open, you turn up, don't you, and you vote.
I do, but I think there's a lot of disaffection with the whole thing, actually. I think people are sick and tired. And it's all very well comparing to other countries. Of course, we're far, far better off, more affluent than...
But, Emma, this is Remembrance Weekend. And look what our grandparents went through.
My father.
Your father and Simon's parents and grandparents. That was real poverty. That was real struggle.
But you're comparing. It doesn't feel like that. If you're living, I don't know, in a cold home with 5 children, you can't, and you're worrying about those fuel bills. Of course, people are worse off around the world. I still think people are shocked at what's happened over the past few years. Look, we wrecked the country in lockdown.
Simon?
Well, I agree with Emma on the point. It's all about turnout. And Labour's very good at getting the vote out, I have to say. And if Conservatives stay at home on election day, then the Conservatives are sunk. It'll all be about getting the vote out.
But we've seen, Simon, in the by-elections where our voters did stay at home.
Yeah.
and I think Reform actually stopped us winning in 2 of the most recent seats. Yeah, but turnout 35% in by-elections, and governments normally get punished in by-elections, but I guarantee you that those seats will go back blue at the general election.
Yeah, no, I could imagine that, yeah. But it's all down to turnout, it's getting the vote out, that'll be crucial.
It really is. And also these unforeseen events. You know, we weren't expecting the Middle East to explode, were we, in October? So I think over the next 12 months, there's going to be a few things that might just sink Starmer or Sunak.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of canvas returns back, Sam. We send surveys out on a regular basis, and we ask people's voter intentions, and it's basically, how did you vote in 2017? How did you vote in 2019? And which way do you intend to vote in the next general election? And I'm retaining over 80% of my first-time Tory voters. So that tells me I've got a really good chance of winning. Now, they're not... And people are generally more honest when they send a survey back than they are on the doorstep on the telephone. So in red wall areas, it seems okay-ish for me.
Yeah, and that's quite possible. I think we'll have a lot of mixed results across the country, actually. Some red wall seats will stay Conservative, and you'll lose some Conservatives where you perhaps didn't expect to lose them. So I think, and the Middle East will play a big part. Will some Labour voters, particularly in Muslim areas, Muslim voters, will they go to the Liberal Democrats, which would leave it open for the Conservatives?
And that's a good point, because, they might be grumpy with us, but they're just as grumpy with the Labour Party at the moment.
Exactly, and we know that Starmer is dependent on millions of Muslim votes, and who knows where they will go. But also, Lee, you make the point about, your support is looking pretty healthy. And I think it's different. If you do have a local MP that you really feel that, you're a high-profile guy, you're out there, you're talking about things, you're getting yourself into hot water once in a while for speaking out.
Me? Really?
and people admire that. No, people admire people who speak out.
Yeah.
If you have an MP who's pretty much faceless, if you have an MP who's not doing much, you don't really care passionately about them, why would you bother to go out and vote on a wet winter's evening next year? Yeah.
Simon, Reform, they say they're going to stand in every single seat in the country. And as we saw in the last 2 by-elections, they actually stopped us from winning seats. Now, I think one of their leaders, I think it was maybe Richard Tice, who was a regular on this show, on this channel, he said that he wanted to get rid of the Conservatives and basically help Labour to win the next general election. But I think what Richard forgets is that he sort of thinks that Labour will bring proportional representation in, which they won't, because that means some of their old guard will get the chop anyway. What they will do, my biggest fear, is that they will bring in votes for 16-year-olds, and then we'll struggle to get in, and Reform will not get a vote. So is he playing dangerous politics with our country?
Yeah. Dangerous game. And I admire Richard hugely, and I admire many in Reform. But it's a dangerous game when you start splitting the right up like this, because you're letting Labour in by the back door.
Simon.
Well, in a general election, I just don't think they're going to have the appeal that they've perhaps had in by-elections. Richard isn't Nigel, is he? Let's be honest about this. He doesn't have the profile that Nigel Farage has had in the past, and the impact he's had on elections. So I don't see him taking lots of votes away from the Conservatives. It's a general election. I think it'll be a minimal impact.
Perhaps we should have the general election when Nigel's in the jungle. Thanks, Simon. Thanks Emma.